Hey everybody, this is Mark White, ISA track certified arborist. I'm over here in the Lakewood area of Duval County, and I'm looking at this live oak. Trying to use this as a reference, educational tool to show people why I look at these trees the way I do, and I write them in my letters. This tree is very similar in regards to the tree at 6803 Susie Street. The reason it's so similar is it's a V-shaped codominant union with included bark and response wood. The other similarity is this has a third section that is dead. On the one on Susie Street, it was removed and cut back to here some years ago. So over here on this side, we see that bulge. That bulge is called response wood. Response wood is wood that forms in response to a dynamic force. And the dynamic forces we have are the weight of the tree, the wind, gravity. Those are all dynamic forces that cause this type of growth. There's flexure growth, compression growth, and all of these things will cause a tree to fail. They're identifying factors that we can see, and we're taught to be able to examine these, and we can make a determination on what to do to mitigate the tree or possibly remove the tree. So this tree already failed. I looked at this tree a month ago and inspected it for the customer. I advised them that some drastic weight needed to come off each side, some through bolts, and cable system. The city looks at these trees, the landscape department, and they say simple limb trims can simply abate this tree. And they're referencing section 1206, subsection G, further subsection I, and III when they mention that. First and foremost, the people that are saying this and making those recommendations are not certified or qualified to make any such recommendations. They should be track certified arborists making those recommendations and being the assessor. So let's take a look at these things. Of course, you see this section of tree leans towards the west. Huge section of tree still standing, and this section leans to the left. So first I want to touch base on simple pruning. This tree is actually 2 codominant unions. There was a third. When we base on a percentage of amount of foliage we can prune out of a tree, or amount of the canopy we can prune out of the tree, we base it on a healthy tree. So this tree leaning to the right with poor attachment is not a healthy tree. Not to mention this right side has probably 35 to 40% less canopy because it couldn't grow to the west because of the section that was to the west, and vice versa with the other section that failed. So with that being said, a tree in this condition, that age, per ANSI A300 section 1 guidelines, no more than 25% of a mature oak tree's canopy should be pruned if it is healthy. This tree is not healthy. This tree had issues. So now we're down to the 15%. Can we get enough weight out of this to mitigate this hazard, or as the city says, the landscape department says, simply abate, which is written in the code, which is incorrect. We don't use that term. We use mitigate. No, we cannot. Who makes that decision whether we do that? Now, furthermore, we could mitigate this tree, but to what extent? We could use cable systems. Per ANSI A300 section 8 gives the guidelines for cable systems, determining the size of this tree and the weight would determine what size cable we would use, what size hardware, and where it's placed in the tree. and also through rods, which are large bolts that you would bolt through this side to this side. And I think, if I remember correct, it's in that same section. At 40 inches, it changed to 7/8 inch, and probably be 5 of them in a tree like this. That's very time consuming, very expensive. There's nothing simple about this. So just wanted to touch base on those things real quick. I know I made another video and I kind of said a couple things in error. So now let's go look at this. This is a V-shaped codominant union with included bark and response or reaction wood. Either term is correct. So when we look at this tree, just like the one on Susie Street, we would see all the way to this area right to here. That's what we would see. And the same thing on this section, we would see here to here. Now there were ferns and stuff here. I removed all that so we could see this more clearly. We see this tissue here. That's that response wood or reaction wood that I was telling you about. That's the only attachment. So included bark of a codominant union is exactly what it says. This side and this side were competing for dominance, and this bark, what they refer to as included bark, is inside that union. And let's step up here, I'll get a better look at it. So inside this union, again, we see this attachment on this side. That's all that was attached. And then we see the same thing over here. That's all that was attached, that light yellow colored tissue. Everything else is included bark or decay. So see all this? That's bark. Bark, and decay. And we see some compartmentalized wood right here. See that? Almost looks like a callus. And that term is called coated, and that stands for compartmentalization of decay in tree. So the tree doesn't heal, it creates new tissue. Not to be confused with this. This is response wood. Again, more decay in this area. And again over here on this side. That's response wood. That's what it was attached. So all this weight of this, each one of these sections opposing each other, and with the dynamic forces of wind and gravity, were only being attached there and there, and here, and here. We're taught when we see V-shaped codominant unions with included bark and large amounts, or even any amount of response wood. Forestry fact sheet number 35 recommends taking the tree down. I know I misspoke and called it forestry fact sheet 53 in a previous video. That was incorrect, I apologize. The city is making recommendations on what to do to these trees to mitigate these hazards. They are not certified or qualified to do so. The city says these trees can be simply abated. Untrue. And they should not be authorized. Nobody in that department should be authorized to tell you what to do to a tree that's going to kill somebody or destroy a house or destroy property. And that's what these trees do. This tree fell. The whole next door neighbor's yard is full. Wiped out that tree, wiped out the laurel oak tree back there. Just missed knocking down the palm tree. Just missed her house. You know, it could have been catastrophic. That's why I write my letters on these trees. And the city has made comments like, oh, if these trees get cut down, we should cut down the treaty oak. Those are unproductive comments that have no place. Yes, these trees are beautiful, but they have defects, hazardous defects that are a major liability. They meet the requirements of Section 1206, subsection G, I, but they also meet the requirements of Florida Statute 163.045. I know that in the statute it says, references potential danger, and I understand that as a hazard. I won't ever recommend somebody to exercise that statute unless I feel it's a hazard and it's going to fail. This is what the tree at 6803 Susie Street and that tree on Plum Street look like inside. The problem is the city with an untrained inspector comes out and sees this, what it looks like from the outside, and they say it's fine, it can be simply abated. Untrue. Your unprofessional opinion is going to be a liability you don't want one day when somebody gets killed because you said a simple limb trim could simply abate this hazard. Just wanted to make this video. I'm trying to help everybody understand what you don't get to see inside. I know another arborist came out and he wanted to argue with me on a timeline. And the timeline is not as important to me because things fail when they fail. This tree failed on a day when there was no wind. It had its last crack and it failed. He mentioned to me that this tree had survived every hurricane and major thunderstorm so far. It must be safe. Nothing could be further from the truth. He should reevaluate his credentials and go back and work in the field a little bit so he can understand these things. Everything, this tree survived everything it survived until it failed. But when it failed, had there been a house or a human underneath, there would be catastrophic consequences. So that is a very poor analogy. We are giving these things, we are taught how to look at these things. Forestry fact sheet number 35 will help break it down very easily for you. That's why I write them in my letter. I know people disagree with me, but when you have the experience and the education that I do, then you can have a valid argument in this matter. Until then, let's leave assessing risk of these large trees to the experts. Again, just wanted to show you this. We'll go look at it from the other side. Again, this section's dead. That was that third section. There it is. That's all the attachment that was on this side. All this is dead and decayed. Same as Susie Street. This concave right here is rounded because it was around this section, this other section that was in there. No attachment. There was no attachment right here for that third section in the center. And that is the exact same way Susie and Plum Street are. Hopefully everybody can take a look at this and get a little bit of knowledge. Just remember, I didn't learn everything overnight either. So it's always, science is always evolving. We're always learning. This side's gonna fall. I've already recommended the customer that needs to come down as well. There's no way to save that. It's a hazard. Thank you guys for your time. I hope this has helped everybody understand what V-shaped codominant unions with included bark and response wood, the dangers and hazards that are present when they're there. We see those, we know that tree is a hazard. They need to be addressed, removed, or mitigated. Who makes the determination of whether it should be mitigated or removed? The owner of the property. That's their decision. You know, the neighbors can have some input, I can have some input, but ultimately they make the decision based on whether they can afford it, what they want to do. It's their tree. But once they've been notified, they can be liable for the damage it causes. And the city becoming an assessor when they're not properly insured nor certified or qualified to do so is a liability and malpractice. Thank you for your time.